Welcome back to the Turn on the Music podcast. This is episode 19. We are going through measure 4 of the book The Spirit of Music. And we, of course, have CJ here to discuss that. How are you, sir, this
I'm
evening?
doing well. How are you doing?
I'm tired. In fact, I'm a little bit late this evening because I fell asleep. So
That's okay. Did you not? I don't think you introduced yourself.
I don't introduce myself anymore. No one knows.
No.
No one cares who I am.
The
To quote
Kyle.
MC Divinity, nobody knows my name. And I am not ashamed or
That's good.
afraid. Is it afraid or is it ashamed? I don't know.
I don't know.
I'm still waking up. I have no idea.
Whatever. Taking naps.
Yeah. I didn't mean to. I just fell asleep.
Hey, listen. Sometimes you just gotta follow through with your body saying take a nap.
Yep.
As long as you're not driving.
That's true. It's funny because I was going to base this week and someone said, don't fall asleep on the way there. And I went, why? Get there faster. Just wake up and be like, oh, I'm here.
Oh.
So,
Have you ever driven like a long distance or to a destination, and when you got there, go, how did that happen?
mm-hmm.
like
When I was in college, I was working with a church, and there were several times that I remember leaving the rehearsal, and I remember showing up at the church, and I don't remember how I got there.
Yep,
So
I've done that many a times to many a places.
yeah, it has not happened in years, but I do remember one specific night when I went, how did I get here?
I wonder if that's the case. I wonder if it's stress related.
Could be.
Because if it hasn't happened in years and you haven't been like crazy stressed,
Yep.
I wonder.
Yep.
It's interesting. That's something to I don't want to look into it really. I just
No, I don't either. So, what have you been listening to this week? Anything good?
No, well, I'm not going to say no. I haven't been listening to music. I've been listening to an audiobook, and I was so fascinated with the audiobook that I bought the sequel to the book like, as soon as I finished the first one,
Oh,
so I
nice.
can continue it. And
Cool.
it's 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 very nerdy, and it's very like 1980s oriented. It's Ready Player One,
Mm-hmm.
and then I downloaded Ready Player Two. They take place in the 2040s, so not that far off. The first one was written in 2011, and the 2011, and the second one was written in 2020.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so not that far, in the sense of, but
Big
the
gap in between the
cons.
two.
I'm sorry.
Big gap in between the two books.
Yes, but the second book takes place right after
Okay.
the first one. Like it's like if you like, I read it I listened to it back to back, and it felt like I just continued whatever was going on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's narrated by Will Wheaton, which I think I mentioned in the previous, and it's
Yep.
just he does such a great job, and just the nostalgia of like the 1980s arcades and the video
Mm-hmm.
games and the movies and all the stuff that he taught, and it's a little music driven too.
Okay.
Like he talks a lot about of like the the music from this 80s and the 90s, and how his playlists that he uses are based upon like, this is his time to shower, this is one playlist, this is his
Mm-hmm.
time to work out, this is another playlist. So it's very interesting how they do it. And if you're a nerd, if you're into all that stuff, it's if and you haven't read it, because I'm totally late to the game,
Mm-hmm.
I would totally
Cool.
read them or listen to Will Wheaton read them, because he does such a great job.
Cool.
Outside of that, I think I put Corey Wong on today for like 15-20 minutes, because it was such a beautiful day out. So I opened up the
Mm-hmm.
windows and played a little music as I was on my way back home.
Gotcha.
How about yourself?
Not much, really. I really haven't listened to much music. A couple podcasts, the two that I normally listen to, um, but not much music. I'm so you guys will have missed the live stream, but tomorrow I plan on listening to a group called Ripe, RIPE, and if you listen to the Corey Wong's live from West Coast tour, West Coast, yes, right, yes, no, yes, live from the West Coast. Um, he has a guy by the name of Robbie Wolfson singing, and he is the lead singer for Ripe. And I went, might as well check him out. So we'll check him out I'll check him out tomorrow. So by the time you guys are hearing this, I will have already checked him out. And I don't know. So yeah,
Next episode, you'll just have to
I'll give an update
air a
next
little
episode.
bit.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
because we're recording the day
Yeah, he has
before.
a really cool voice. He sings on a couple tracks, but the one in particular is the starting line with Sierra Hull, which is pretty cool.
Oh, nice.
So
That's awesome.
that's my
Something
plan.
new. So have you listened to any of it yet, or tomorrow night you'll be
I
listening to
listened
on the
to
phone?
a little bit of the opening track of one of the live shows he did.
Okay.
Um, it was interesting. It was, kind of funk driven a little bit, but it should be, it was only one song, so who knows where it's going to go. But it's him, two guitars, a bass, a trumpet, and a trombone
Oh,
and
cool.
drums. So
Oh, nice.
kind of got a Mingo Fish Trap vibe from it.
Okay.
So we'll see what happens. And speaking
Cool.
of Mingo Fish Trap, when we were live on Sunday, he had posted the first video that I've seen in a long time of him performing live. It was for a church. He sounds great. I'm really glad he's back up and getting ready to perform again. So
That's
I'm
awesome.
excited to hear him. For those that don't know, he was battling cancer, so it looks like he's ready to go and ready to start doing some more music, which is really exciting. So
That's awesome. That's good.
yep.
So
Shall we
then
get into the book?
I was gonna say let's dive in.
I need to get back into blind mode because that's what I do every episode. Get into blind mode.
Now, this chapter is really I think the jumping point
Yes.
to the whole book.
Yep. You really start to feel the intensity start to build in this episode, in this chapter. And of course we meet another character in this episode. So this is measure 4. So this is a brother from another motherland. And the tagline is all dreams are important. So yeah.
So how do you want to start this? Because
I don't know.
because it's tough. Because it's not
Yeah.
that there's some things in here that are important, but
Mm-hmm.
this is what starts this craziness of this book.
Right.
And I mean craziness in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't have anything like crazy highlighted or underlined because a lot of it is story. Like he just
Yep.
talks about um going back home
Mm-hmm.
and he
And a lot of it kind of recaps the first book.
right. Yeah. Because he talks about going like what is it? He spent like a few days with Jonathan,
Mm-hmm.
working with him, learning from him himself. Um he says his role became much easier when he remembered to stop trying to teach
Right.
and to focus on showing.
Mm-hmm. Which
And
can be really
then
hard sometimes.
I agree. I really it's 100% because at the end of that paragraph he goes, if I could consistently remember to relax and show Jonathan where to look, he would teach himself what he needed to know.
Right.
And I mean that just goes for anything. I think I
I
don't think
agree. Yep.
that's 100% anything. And then they talked about how in the previous book he talked about the elements of music,
Mm-hmm.
but they dive in a little bit deeper where they say that there are sub levels to the elements.
Right.
But he does say something just before they break that down. So Victor recaps, not long after my time with Michael, I realized that the elements were related and intertwined. For example, the dynamic of a song can be changed by altering any of the other elements. Adding or reducing space changes the dynamic as well as the phrasing. Altering the rhythm can change the complete style or feel. Choosing different notes can change the emotional feel. And most importantly, to know how to properly use any of these elements, we must first listen.
Mm-hmm.
And then they go into how they break it up into sub levels,
Yep.
like how there's more to each one.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you want to
I don't know that
go.
we need to get into that.
No, I don't think
Um,
we do. Then once they
read
go
the
through
book.
that,
Read the book.
Huh?
Read the book.
Yeah, no, yeah, definitely. I think read the book. Once they go through that, he, like Kyle said, he kind of like hits back at the first book. So he brings those elements in, kind of like a recap, like, hey, this is what happened previously, and this is what we're
Hmm.
getting into.
Yep.
Um, and there is, I don't know if you have it, what you have underlined, because like we've said before, we don't talk.
Yeah, I think that the first thing that I have is where he's talking to Jonathan. He says, "Jonathan, we are more than musicians. Music breathes through our bodies and expresses herself through our souls. The word musician indicates that we are music shamans. Our role is to summon her spirit and bring her to life. You see, music exists without us, but on earth she cannot take form without us. We create music's vibrations, but we do not create music no more than a mother creates the spirit that exists inside her baby. But like the baby who cannot exist without its mother, music cannot physically exist without us. That gives us power and responsibility. Music shamans, that's who we are." Which is a lot to unpack,
It is.
but it's said so well.
Are you going to unpack it?
I sure.
Do we want to attempt to unpack it?
I don't know. I mean,
Or we want to
it's
just say it's lost the carousel at the airport?
yes. I mean, it's what we've been saying the whole time is that, we are kind of a vessel for we are essentially an instrument for music. Is essentially what it's saying there, which it's again, it's hard to get out of the way sometimes. It's something that I know I struggle with all the time is just trying to get out of the way, especially when playing the piano. Not so much, for whatever reason, singing is easier. I don't know why that is, but maybe it's because of the training I got as a
I think
singer.
it's because you also don't think of it as your main instrument.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that to sound funny, because
No, no, I
I'm
agree
not putting
totally.
that's nothing against your voice, because
Yeah.
we've sung together and I know you
Hmm.
have a good voice. What I'm saying is like, piano is your main instrument.
Right.
That's what you
Hmm.
do.
Yep.
And I think that, like, for me, singing is easier because I do want that to be my main instrument.
Hmm.
I wish I was better at the saxophone, and that's my struggle.
Right.
But then there are struggles with singing that I have, because I want to be good,
Hmm.
because that's my main interest. So I do struggle on both, and I'd rather and not to sound funny, I'd rather the struggle be on my voice than be on my saxophone, because
Right.
the voice is what I wanted to work on.
Hmm.
So what I think is interesting, though, Jonathan's response is, some people may be scared of this power.
Mm. Yep. And that's kind of like when Victor was going through the same thing with Michael, the first book, he said the same thing. When Michael was talking about, how James Brown was able to calm down riots, and how the government was potentially like, had records of all these people who have influenced the way like that, that Michael was talking about. So, yeah, it's a
Yeah, no,
scary thing potentially.
yeah, it's very, very interesting.
Hmm.
Um, then he goes to leave the apartment,
Yes,
and he runs into, or he sees, a man with headphones,
and a familiar looking man.
and a familiar looking man. So he goes to leave,
Hmm.
and he tries to sneak out without kind of being seen by the guy, and took a different route home.
Yep.
And then so in the previous book, he talks about, what was it, 12 measures?
Yes.
It was 12 measures
Hmm.
that Michael gave him and said, learn these 12 measures. And
Yep.
he felt that with Jonathan, he was going to give him a copy of this.
Right. And each measure was supposed to represent one of the elements of music that Michael had taught him.
Right. And each measure is based, and if you were listening to our first book, each measure is one of the chapters in that book.
Yes. Yeah. If you
Right.
look at the beginning of the chapter, that little measure is at the very beginning.
Right. So he states that the 10th measure, the one relating to space, was gone, completely gone. There was an actual blank space in the middle of the page where the measure was supposed to be, not as if I'd forgotten to write it down, but as if it has been erased. and he focused on this, and he couldn't figure it out why.
Mm-hmm.
And then he had a dream,
Yep.
and the dream he had was of a flock of birds,
Mm-hmm.
even to the point where one kind of like got right in front of him on his face.
Yep.
That's when he woke up, confused, because it was still dark outside.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting
And
how the role that birds play in these books.
yes,
There was the hawk in the first book. The hawk
yes,
comes back in this book. Doesn't mention what kind of bird this was, but I kind of picture a small songbird.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. It doesn't. I don't think so. It just says light blue birds, a
I
flock
kind
of
of
light blue.
picture like cartoon birds. I don't know why.
I know, I totally, because
You know what?
usually they're typically blue.
Yeah, yeah. Like I actually think about like, not to date us, but do you remember like the Disney song Zippity Doo Dah?
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, totally.
the bluebirds on my shoulder. That's what I picture.
That's funny.
I am
Um,
old.
then he states that the whole dream happened in silence.
Yes.
Actually, he states that he doesn't typically dream in color,
Mm-hmm.
and these were in color.
Which a Victor Wooten song. Well,
Yes. And do you know
Joseph
why
Wooten
that
song,
is?
but no.
So there was a study done that people that were born before the invention of color TV typically only dream in black and white. And
Interesting.
those that were born after the invention of color TV, and if they were exposed to it, they dream in color.
Hmm.
It had something to do with how our minds. I'm sure as people got older and they started watching color for TV, if they were able to afford it,
Mm-hmm.
they dreamt. That's why I think this is very interesting, because that's probably what happened with him. And if you think about it, if you're a family that does not have a lot of money, you're not getting that color TV right away at the time,
Right.
and them being a black family, I'm sure it was even harder for them, depending upon where they were
Mm.
living, to potentially get a TV
Right.
because of the civil rights and all that stuff, which is ridiculous. But
Yep.
so I always thought that was very interesting,
Mm.
how they figured that out.
Do kids dream in 4K now?
in 4K or 8K at this point. Because I think I've only had a few black and white dreams.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that is because like there was a couple movies I watched that had like black and white scenes, and that's what triggered it. But typically I dream in color.
Hmm. What's interesting is I wonder what happened before television.
True.
Do they dream in radio?
Does it just sound like there's no. Well, but think about it, because it's not like people were in black and white. So
Right.
like were they not dreaming in color back then?
Who knows?
Who knows? That's a study for a DeLorean that can go back in time. So
Mm-hmm.
so he states the whole dream happened in silence. He said the beaks were moving and nothing was coming out. Even the one that hovered in front of him. Then he goes on to breakfast.
Yep. His mother, of
Now,
course, asked him what's going on because she knew, but he wasn't ready to talk about it.
yeah,
And he eventually makes his way over to Jonathan's apartment.
yes.
When he
And
gets
this is
there,
where
Jonathan is not there. In fact, his apartment's empty. Um, and this is the next thing I highlighted. So when he realizes that Jonathan is gone, he wonders if like he scared him off. And he says, "Guilty thoughts race through the air in front of me. Jonathan must have grown tired of me. He realized I was a fake. Yes, that must be it. I left early yesterday. That gave him time to remove all his things because his apartment was empty. Or maybe something else. Something happened to him. It's my fault. He doesn't know how to reach me. I made sure of it, the same way Michael had with me. I felt it would add to the mystery. Jonathan left me. Who do I think I am?" And I highlighted that because like that's how I always feel. It's like when something goes wrong, it's always my fault, you know. And when I read this, I had a lot of things like happen at the end of last week, and I was like, that's all on me. And it's like it wasn't, but like that's just the way I am. It's just everything's always on me. So it just kind of hit home for me. That's why I
I,
highlighted it.
no, and I feel you, because I feel the same way. There's when things go like if you're part of a situation where something doesn't go right, I put that on me as well. It was funny because I had this conversation with a coworker earlier, and we were talking about stress, and we were talking about, she mentioned that she goes, she doesn't see me getting stressed very easily at work. I said, it's not that I'm not getting stressed. It's just that if I'm the person that needs to go in and fix the situation,
Mm-hmm.
if I come in stress, it's not going to help you.
Right.
And it's not going to
Exactly.
help the person I'm helping.
Mm-hmm.
So I need to find a way to keep my composure,
Yep.
go in and do what I got to do, and then be done with the situation. That doesn't
Yep.
mean I'm not stressed. It's just that I found a way to kind of like hide it
Right.
or whatever
Mm-hmm.
behind me.
Exactly.
But
Yep.
at the end, if something goes wrong, you're like, well, what did I do wrong?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so I totally get that.
Yep.
But what I think is interesting is, so we talked a lot about how there's a lot of mental health in this, his anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
his back and forth. Further down, after he kind of talks about trying to get away, he goes, if Jonathan left for me because of me, it was his choice.
Mm-hmm.
So in that brief moment, he's like, well, wait a second. He has a right to do that.
Yep. Yep. For sure.
You know? Um, so he goes to leave the room,
Mm-hmm.
right? And take his time to leave. He was taking his time because he was worried about Jonathan. And okay, hold on a second. I'm wondering if I missed something. I feel like I missed something. To no. Okay. So this is what I was like. So he was crouched down leaving the apartment, and he noticed a pair of black headphones resting defiantly in the middle of the open doorway. Um he did not pick them up. He did not put them on. He just left. And he made his way down the steps to the cars. And he said a small bird landed on the ground next to me. He tried to shoo it away. It was a light blue bird.
Mm-hmm.
And then the bird flew to the car, on top of the car, and it landed on the trunk of it next to his head. So he had to shift his position. And the sentence that I think is key is, although the bird's actions were animated, all was silent. Its beak was moving, but no sound emerged.
Mm-hmm.
And then
So
his
very
mom's
similar
word,
to his
look,
dream. Yep.
yep, all dreams are important.
Yep.
So, and then he eased up because what happened, what's happening now is he saw this guy dressed in black again, and
Yes.
he realized it was the same guy from.
And did you mention the headphones? Sorry.
I did mention the
Okay.
headphones.
Sorry.
Yeah, that he saw
Brain.
them, but he didn't pick them up. No. But this is the same guy that he saw in the record store with the headphones come in to fix the record player that he never fixed. So he goes to leave, and he realizes that the bird's trying to, like, in a sense, warn him that the
Mm-hmm.
guy's coming.
Yep.
He ran a few blocks, wondering where Jonathan was. He wanted to head back to his parents' house, but he decided to go a different route because it was safer,
Yep.
essentially. Crossed the street and headed into the public library. He said it was empty, parking lot. The parking lot was mostly empty, but the library was open. Went in, saw a book on the table, opened it up, and it went to a chapter titled Music in the World's Religions. That at that time,
This is a book I want to find.
it said it fell open to a chapter titled Music in World's Religions.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't state the name of the book, though.
No.
Huh. I'm curious then. So he started reading it. Then he was grabbed on the shoulder
Mm-hmm.
from behind.
Yes, he was.
And the person said, "Whoa, no problem, my brother. Keep reading. It is okay." He definitely had an accent. And Victor states that the guy referred to him as his brother, and for a moment, he was a little bit baffled because he could easily pass as one of his relatives.
Mm-hmm.
like a brother from another motherland. His darkened skin and facial features made it clear he was of African descent. Which country, Victor could not tell, although he looked friendly, even though he was sure that they'd never met, and he wasn't sure to trust him. And they kind of have a little bit of a back and forth. And that back and forth, they talk about, like they're trying to figure out, like the guy's trying to figure out why Victor's so scared and everything like that. And
Yep.
Victor doesn't want to tell him because he's embarrassed.
Yep.
And
I was just trying to
Victor,
figure out if they mention his name in this chapter. I don't think they do they?
the guy's name, no,
I didn't think so. Okay.
because there's an ending. There's a part to the end of this chapter that happens, and they touch base on it in the next chapter.
Right.
Yeah, and they go back and forth. Victor finally realizes that the guy had a very friendly demeanor, but he was embarrassed to say what he was running from.
Mm-hmm.
And he eventually said, without looking up, "I'm sorry to bother you. It was just a man I saw. I thought he was following me. He was wearing headphones." Well, no. I mean, yes. He was wearing them, but not today. I mean, he had them, but he left them upstairs. I think they were his, but they may have been Jonathan's, but he wasn't home. I don't really know why I was running. Sounded silly and all that stuff. But the gentleman dropped, he offered the book with both hands. His hands dropped toward the floor and his smile slowly faded away. And without a word, this is the gentleman, grabbed his belongings off the table and walked to the door. Victor didn't understand. And the guy goes, "Who did you see?" Victor's like, "The man with the head." The guy's like, "The man with the headphone." Like, he's like, "Who is it?" And Victor's like, "I don't, I didn't see the face."
Mm-hmm.
He asked if he saw if the headphones had a red light on it. And Victor said he thinks so, but he wasn't sure. Um, and then the guy asked, "Did you put them on? Did you wear the headphones?" And he said, "No." His eyes, "Did you see him?" "I don't know. He was kind of far away." The guy goes, You are a musician?" "Yes." "That's right," I answered. "How'd you know?" "You were smart to run."
And that's a question that I want to ask you. Are
Yeah.
you able to pick musicians out of a crowd?
Yes. There's a fluidity to them.
Mm-hmm.
Especially ones that are not, how do I say this without it sounding funny? Pompous.
Yes.
And I don't mean that like I'm trying, and I'm not saying that they're bad musicians. Like,
No,
I'm
no, no.
not saying that, but
For
it's the
me,
way they
it's
carry themselves.
exactly. That's part of it. I think for me, it's an energy thing.
Right. That's
You
what it
know,
is for me.
there's an energy about them that I recognize.
Someone who's either plays for a living or
Mm-hmm.
plays an instrument or is musically inclined.
Yep.
There's an energy about them.
Mm-hmm.
That's not to say that people that are not musically inclined don't have an energy. They just have a different energy.
Right. Right.
It's that thing. But
Yep.
I think that there is I think in a sense, which is what this book talks about, there is a connection between musicians.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you know the musician or not, there's a connection there.
Yep.
And if you're going to play or sing or perform with a musician, even if it's for the first time, you can connect with that person.
Mm-hmm.
There's a
Yep.
reason why you can connect with that
Yep.
person.
And I'll tell you this: like the first time I saw Rachel, like I didn't know her. I knew she was a musician right away. Um, I don't know how I knew that, but I also knew that we would perform well together, like
Yeah, I can
instantly.
see that.
And then when I heard her play, I knew for sure, and we did a piano guys thing with the first thing. It was, and the connection was a really interesting connection, and she's talked about it a little bit, and in fact, so I was the interim organist at this church, and when they finally hired an organist, um, that organist accompanied her once, and she's like, it was totally different. Like she's like, it was almost like we were two different people. But like when it was us, like she doesn't realize how well she speaks the musical language. Um, so she was really telling me what to do, and I was just responding. But the new organist didn't speak as well, or whatever it was. There was no dialogue going on musically, and she
But
sensed it.
I mean, but that also is a reading off of you.
Mhm.
So she's feeling you, you're feeling, and
Exactly.
that's the combination. And she
Yep.
and it's almost like she knew that you would respect
Mhm.
what she's putting out there.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I think that's a big thing too, because I'm sure, I definitely struggled with this, but over time you realize that if you open yourself up to others when it comes to this, the receptiveness and that you get is definitely um an open receptiveness
Mhm.
versus a closed one.
Yep.
Of course you got to be careful with who it is, and
Mhm.
that's just anything you do. But yeah,
Yep.
but I could see that. I mean, I never met her in person, but
Mhm.
through the interview that we did, which through Zoom, I
Mhm.
could totally see that and
Yep.
get that. Yeah. Uh, so they go on. The guy asks, "Did he follow you?" He doesn't know, and then he says something. He goes, "Action is to fear as food is to hunger."
Mm. And that was not a quote from him. That was a quote from his teacher.
Essa,
Yeah.
essa, I think. ESSAH. I
Mhm.
hope I said it right. And like Victor says, he's confused, but I get it. When you're fearful of something, you take action,
Mhm.
whether it is to run away or to go towards it.
Right.
When you're hungry,
Mhm.
you eat food.
Yep.
But like, it's so funny that Victor was like, I don't get it.
Mhm.
And I understand why he doesn't get it.
Right.
At the same time,
Mhm.
like I guess in that situation, like if I was in that situation, I'd probably be like, the hell are you talking?
Right.
I'm not hungry. No, just
Yep.
like, I mean, I'm always hungry, but I don't
Well,
eat food now.
I'm definitely always hungry too. But when you feel like you're being, followed and chased, and
Yeah,
and it's,
yeah,
you don't think clearly.
right. Um, so he's saying we got to get out of here. We have to get out of here. And Victor's like, I'm not going anywhere until you tell me who you're talking about. And then he says that this is the gentleman. We must go, he repeated. Victor, my brother, trust me. We must go now. And he gave him a look he could not deny. And Victor was like, okay,
Hmm.
let's go. And the last line in this chapter, I think, is so cool. Nothing was starting to make sense.
Yep.
And unless you're reading the book, in the book, the word nothing is italicized.
Hmm.
And I know that part of that is to inflect nothing, but at the same time, he was taught nothing. And there's such a deeper meaning to that. Well, I
Hmm.
think there's such a deeper meaning to that
Yeah.
sentence.
Yep.
Like when I read it, first I heard, like, I listened to audiobook and then I read the book,
Hmm.
and I'm like, that is so more powerful than
Yep.
just what people probably would think it is.
Hmm. And there's another meaning to that sentence that I don't want to give away because it comes back a little bit later in the book.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. So we've been introduced to technically two characters.
Hmm.
Um, this
I mean,
gentleman who we don't have a name.
his mom and dad too, I guess. But
No, his mom and dad were introduced early in the book.
yeah, this book, right? They weren't in the original book.
Yeah, didn't he mention them?
Maybe he did. I don't know.
Well, whatever.
I'm still
But
sleeping.
I'm
I have
just
no idea what's going on.
no, no, um, but the two characters were this gentleman he met in the library, who we find out what his name is in the next chapter, and then this guy in black with headphones,
Mm.
who's technically not just one character. There's multiple, but it this is what is going to start driving the book forward. The
Yep.
next chapter, they basically go on a road trip.
Yep.
Yeah.
Short chapter this week.
I don't know if it's the short chapter. There's not like I think the next chapter there's going to be more for us to
Mm-hmm.
sit and talk on. I think
Yep.
this chapter is like, hey, we're getting into the story now.
Exactly. Yep.
There was a lot of it wasn't wordy in the sense of the things that stood out. It was more of like, okay, let's develop this for a moment. And the
Mm-hmm.
next chapter, I mean, it's in itself. Let's see if I can do math. I don't want to do math. So the chapter itself is only a little less than 20 pages.
Mm-hmm.
This chapter has a lot of stuff
Mm-hmm.
in that 20 pages.
Yep. Yes.
There's a lot of stuff in it.
Yes, there is.
And it's a very interesting chapter.
Mm-hmm.
Um when do we learn the name of the character?
I started looking ahead and I couldn't find it quickly. So,
Um they head back to his parents' house. That's what happens. That's where this starts.
right. Page 75, I think.
Yeah.
Somewhere around there. So,
Yeah, what I think is funny though is Victor never says he's Victor,
right.
and he knew his name was Victor.
Mm-hmm.
Does that get acknowledged in the next chapter? I forget.
I think it does. I haven't
Okay.
read the next chapter recently, so I don't remember. I
Yeah,
don't know
I
this
don't
book
know.
nearly as well as I know the music lesson. So,
No.
um,
It's just I was thinking about that. So,
yeah,
but the
and
next chapter is pretty interesting.
yes,
The way
and
it's
and
broken down.
and as we meet these new characters, you like this is kind of a recurring theme. Like when Victor met Jonathan, he knew Jonathan's name, and you know, it's kind of a recurring theme. When Michael met Victor, they the name thing happened again. So it's just a thing that happens
Well, I
throughout
think
this
that
the
goes
book.
back to the whole energy thing with
Mm-hmm.
musicians
Right.
or what they're saying about music and how music is connected. And
Yep.
it's that whole concept of what Victor says in the previous book that we're not born knowing anything, and the knowledge that we learn is already out there for us to be shown. And our creativity doesn't come from thin air, it comes from the stuff that we know already.
Mm-hmm.
And the
Yep.
more that we take in, more knowledge we take in, the more creative we could be.
Right.
And I never really thought about that, but then I think about like artists, and I don't mean musicians, I mean like painters, sketch
Mm-hmm.
artists, and all stuff. Like I draw, and a lot of times you're influenced by, and just like in music though, but you're influenced by other artists.
Yep.
Like I'm going to draw this, and oh, I remember this artist did this, so I'm going to try that, and I'm going to do
Mm-hmm.
this. And same thing with painting, and even car designs. Like
Yeah.
everybody steals from everybody
Mm-hmm.
because you have to,
Right.
you know. And those people that have this really cool car that everybody's like going by, it's like so we watched that car show, Top Gear, and then
Mm-hmm.
the Grand Tour.
Yep.
And one of the episodes in Top Gear, they talk about how the Mercedes, I think it's the S Class, where that when they put that car out, it's got a lot more new tech in it. Whether it's safety features, whether it's technology, whatever. And they say that the tech that comes out in that car is what influences the tech that comes out in future cars.
Mm.
Not just for Mercedes, but
Right.
for every other car company out there.
Right.
And it's like that same thing. Like you said that this band Ripe has a Mingo fish trap feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
Whether or not that's the purpose, but for all we
Right.
know, they've heard them once and they're like, I like that. I can
Mm-hmm.
I can work with that.
Yep.
Yeah. It's that creativity from
Mm-hmm.
it's this it this book is this one is dense in a
Yeah.
good way.
Yep. It is.
Like it's one of those books that you read and you're just like, where is this going?
Mm-hmm.
I can't stop. It's
Yep.
so strange. Where is
Yep.
this going?
Exactly. Yeah, this is gonna pull you in for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, it definitely is.
So with that,
Yeah,
shall we
nothing. I think this is like one of our shortest episodes
I think this is probably our shortest episode.
because we can't go into the next chapter. We need a full episode for the next
Oh yeah,
chapter.
we might need 2 episodes for the next chapter.
That's
This
true.
is so
We might
much.
need two for the next chapter.
So
And
you're getting off easy this week, people.
And we were just talking prior. We didn't acknowledge that episode 17 of this season was our 50th episode for our podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to try to plan something big for our 100th episode, because I know we're going to get there. It's just a matter of time. It's another 50, but it's a matter of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's all she wrote.
I think so too.
Or he wrote, I should say, for now.
Well, yeah.
Whatever.
So, yeah. So thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you all next week. Remember that we do live streams on Sunday evening at 7:30, and I do live streams on Friday at 8 o'clock. So make sure you're following us in our socials. They'll be in the show notes, of course. And we'll see you guys all next week. Thank you so much.
Next week. Thank you for listening again and watching if you're watching.
Yep. Have a good one, everyone.
Good one.